If you watch my channel, you know as of late I've been covering the Pearla app, and I was initially drawn to it because of the open gate shooting. Shooting open gate log on a phone is pretty darn cool. But the app is in beta, or was in beta, and it just was a little bit buggy and it wasn't that friendly to use. But that's all changed because Pearla just dropped the big update. And so today we're going to look at that, and then I'm going to compare it to the industry standard Blackmagic camera app. So here's the new Pearla app user interface, and it is so much better than the previous. And they said it was going to be better, and it really is. And you can see it's got a clean layout. You've got all your different data down here at the bottom now. You've got ISO, shutter, exposure compensation, white balance, tint, focus, and then the zoom, which is technically really the lens. That's kind of a weird way to name that. Normally that would be camera or lens, but that's neither here nor there. And then if you want to go to photo, you click there and you go to photo. Now we're in photo mode, and you want to go back to video. So the camera interface looks similar to Blackmagic. Blackmagic has the stuff along the top and the bottom. This only has it along the bottom. Although unless I hit histogram, that goes up there, and you can also do a waveform. And so you can do a waveform there, or you can turn that off and have nothing there. So that's similar to Blackmagic, just a little bit of a different way to do it. The one thing that's really different compared to Blackmagic, and we'll get to the specific features in a minute, but just as far as interface goes, you notice right then how I'm swiping. You can just swipe up and get to, this is the main menu. And it's pretty comprehensive. It reminds me a little bit of the Blackmagic camera, the traditional camera, in the way it's laid out. It has these big buttons, and it's a very simple layout and design. But you've got your video where you can come in here and set the angle or the speed, which is nice. As a filmmaker, I tend to use angle for the shutter. You've got your different formats. So you got HEVC, Apple ProRes, and then here you got your frame rates. And then the big thing with the Pearla app, and the one reason I was initially drawn to it, is the 4K open gate. And to get back to the camera, you just swipe. And now you can see it's a 4:3, so you're shooting open gate. And when you go into open gate mode, you get a little different interface here. The stuff goes to the side. But to get back to here in the menu, we'll go here, and I'll go back to 16:9, just 4K UHD. And so the menu system is, again, similar to the Blackmagic camera, not really the Blackmagic app, because the Blackmagic app, you go out of the camera interface and you have all the settings on the side. And so it's a subjective call, but this is kind of nice. And again, it's full featured. You've got overlays, you've got image processing. This is also one thing that Pearla has that Blackmagic doesn't have. To me, I probably wouldn't use it a lot, but it is nice if you want to bake in a look. And that is, you can do film emulation, you can reduce the sharpening, which is nice, or increase the sharpening, which you never want to do. And then you can add grain in camera. I've been doing none. I tend to like to add grain in post-production, but it is kind of cool to have it here. And then they've got film emulations built in, and you can choose the one you want, and whatever you hit, it will apply it to the actual screen. A little hard to tell here in this sample. But I've been shooting log, and so you do have all these different log settings. And this is another thing that's different than Blackmagic. You got Pearl log, which there's some debate about what exactly that is. To me, it's Apple log. They've either rewrapped Apple log or renamed it, or fine-tuned their version, but it's basically Apple log. But then they have all these different traditional camera log, like Arri Log C or Sony S-Log, etc. And then when you're in post, you can apply your workflow to those particular camera looks, to those particular log profiles. And I did a previous video testing that out, and it works pretty well. It's not exact, but it's a pretty interesting little feature. And now they have anamorphic desqueeze in camera, and you can either just monitor it or record the file that way. And now they do have a clean HDMI out, and then you've got a way to customize the look of the app, and then you can do some presets. Now, it's not nearly as detailed as the Blackmagic presets. And then the other thing is you can now record your video out to an external drive. So you can go to the library, or you can go to files, and you can choose an SSD if I had one connected. So they've really updated the app, and it's a much nicer user experience now. And so it's a big, nice upgrade compared to where they were. And so obviously Pearla is taking the video app space seriously and improving the app in a lot of different ways. And this is not going to be a full tutorial, but I just wanted to show off the interface and then compare it to Blackmagic. Now I'll break down the key features within each app and compare them. All right, now we're in Blackmagic, and I do have the Pearla app pulled up as well. So You can kind of see them side by side there. The white balance looks totally different on the Blackmagic camera app, but we won't worry about that right now. It's a good way to tell them apart. The main difference, of course, as far as the layout, Blackmagic has the menu stuff on the side, and pretty much everything is accessible from the main screen. Unless you go into the detailed settings, then you have all these different things along the column here, and they pop up over here. But as far as when you're shooting, you do have a lot more at your fingertips using the Blackmagic camera app. The main differences between the two as far as features, first and foremost, at least from my perspective, is the open gate. And one thing in my previous videos, I did mention a benefit of shooting open gate. Not only are you using the full sensor, the other thing that's great is for doing social media. That way you get more resolution on the vertical. So that way you can easily do 9:16 for Instagram or whatever you're doing. And then you could just do 4:3 open gate, or you could push in and reframe and do 16:9. Now, if you did 16:9, you would lose the top and bottom, but when you're doing 9:16, you get more information on the top and bottom. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's one of the big features. Blackmagic does not have that. The other thing this has that Blackmagic doesn't have are the film emulations. So you can simulate film looks or film stocks within the app. When you're doing that, you're not shooting log though. I tend to like to do that in post-production, but it is a cool option to have if you're doing quick kind of stuff, or if you just don't want to mess with that in post-production. Same goes with the grain. Yeah, so you can add grain, live grain, so to speak, as you're recording. And again, I like to do that in post using like Dehancer or Film Convert. That way you have more control. It's not baked in, because once you do this, it is baked into the image. And then another thing this app has that Blackmagic doesn't have is you can control the sharpness. You can dial it down by -1, 0, or +1. This alone, when you're shooting standard video, is one of the biggest giveaways you're shooting on an iPhone, is the iPhone footage is over sharpened. That's a good feature to see in a professional app. And then a really big one, and I don't have an older iPhone to test right now. This is a 16 Pro Max, and I also have a 15 Pro Max, but you can turn dynamic tone mapping on and off, evidently, which is great. As I said in my previous video, with Filmic Pro and Cinema P3 and a couple other apps, you can change the type of tone mapping that's being used. There's a couple different flavors of it, but you can't turn it on and off, at least not to my knowledge. Maybe you can now. Now, with the latest generation phones, you can turn it off by shooting Apple Log. It automatically turns it off. There's no dynamic tone mapping when you're shooting Apple Log. But here, you can turn dynamic tone mapping off. So that is really a pretty big feature. Now I want to look at the features that Blackmagic has that Pearla does not have and really should, and I hope they add them. One really big omission, and I really can't believe they don't have it, and I can only assume they're going to add it, and that is when you go to focus, I can't find any focus peaking. Using focus peaking, even on a phone, is imperative. I don't know how you work without it in a professional setting, that is. Yeah, even using autofocus, I like to know what's in focus, because even with these small sensor phones, when stuff is close to the lens, you know, your hand will be in focus and the background's out of focus. So if you don't have peaking, sometimes, especially on these small screens and when you're outside in bright light, it's hard to tell what's in focus. And so Blackmagic, of course, has focus peaking. And the nice thing about it is you can actually control it right here on the screen. You go up here to the different monitor overlays, and you've got focus peaking right there. So for me, that's a big one. That's a really big one, but I would think that Pearla should be able to add that, hopefully in an update coming soon. And while we're on this screen, you've got all the overlays, which Pearla has a lot of overlays as well. The nice thing about Blackmagic is you actually see them as you're applying them. You can see the lines. So it's basically a live preview of what you're seeing. With Pearla, they have a nice assortment of overlays. However, you choose it, and then you've got to choose it here and then go back to the app. And there it is. You can see the 239-1. So again, they have the similar guides and overlays as Blackmagic, but with Blackmagic, when you do it, you see it in real time as you're switching it. For me, it's just a little bit easier way to work. A pretty cool thing that Blackmagic does, and this is a tip if you didn't know, you can swipe your finger and you get a clean screen. You swipe it again and all the information comes back. I don't think Pearla has that. If it does, I don't know it yet. It may be hidden, but that is one thing I really do like about Blackmagic. Another feature that Blackmagic has that's really the best in class, best in the industry, you go to settings and you go to presets, and you can easily add any kind of preset you want. And I mean, it will save everything. You can change the lens, you can change the white balance, it'll remember the zoom setting, it'll remember everything. It's really pretty amazing. And so it's something that I really like. Now, I mentioned in the overview of Pearla that it does have a preset feature. So I'm now in Pearla, and you can see here under customization, you've got C1, C2, C3, C4. Reminds me of like a mirrorless camera where you can put it to different settings and you can select what you want it to do with that particular button. I don't believe these are full featured presets though. I'm glad to see they're including that, but Blackmagic really shines in that regard. And then one last really big difference, and it could just be that I don't know how to get these to show, but I don't even see audio meters on the app. And in the settings, there's definitely no settings to adjust the audio meters. And so I'm guessing at this point, maybe that's a feature that's coming, or right now, everything is just done through automatic audio. And so in a way, you might treat this like a film camera, meaning that it would just be the thing you capture your visuals with, and you would record sound to a secondary device like a Zoom recorder, Tascam, what have you, and then sync in post-production. Whenever I do movies, that's how I record stuff anyway. It is nice to be able to have, though, in the Blackmagic app, full control over your audio. Now, if you're just using the iPhone mic, you don't. You have to plug in a mic. And of course, beyond just the meters, there's an entire menu where you can choose your audio source, your audio format, your sample rate, et cetera, within the app. The Blackmagic camera just has very deep menus. Now, this app has been around for what, I think going on 2 years. So it has a big head start. So I'm not really dissing Pearla. I'm just talking about the differences right now as we speak. And if you think about it, apps like Filmic Pro, et cetera, that have been around 10, 15 years, and they had a big head start on Blackmagic, but then Blackmagic had their traditional cameras that they borrowed from in the design of this app. And so that's a big selling point for Blackmagic, just the ease and use of the app. And of course, maybe the biggest for some of you out there, the Blackmagic camera app is free and Pearla is a subscription. I really do like the new update from Pearla. They've made a lot of improvement and it's really good. I gotta give them credit. However, considering Blackmagic is free and it's a more full-featured app, even though Pearla, again, has made a lot of improvement, I would stick with Blackmagic. However, you want to shoot open gate, and in particular for social media, or again, reframing in post, and then technically you are getting a higher quality image because you're using the full sensor, then Pearla might be worth a look. So if you got an extra 20, 25 bucks in your pocket and you don't mind a subscription, give it a try. Thanks for watching. This is Blake Calhoun. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.